I've never seen a badger.
No.
You don't need no stinking badges. This is 16 years, man.
Wow.
Over 4 different terms, right? 2 sets.
Yeah, with one out.
What are you gonna do with all this free time, huh?
That's my wife.
You gonna watch this?
All right. We will call to order the Thursday, June 20th, 2024 Planning Commission meeting. If we can start with roll call, please.
Chair Dennison.
Here.
Vice Chair Pefsner.
Here.
Commissioner Moran. Here. Commissioner Simcock.
Here.
Commissioner Yu.
Here.
Chair, you have the quorum to conduct meeting.
Thank you. I would look for a motion to change the agenda to put the second item first. If
I'd like to move to change the order of the agenda, bring the second one to first.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Next up is approval of minutes of the June 6th, 2024 Planning Commission meeting. Does anybody have any edits they'd propose? Hearing none, I would look for a motion to accept as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next up, we'll go with the City Council Liaison Report.
Welcome back.
Good evening, Chair Dennison and Commission. The only thing we have to report on is our next City Council meeting will include the TUPs that we, I don't know if you saw the last City Council meeting, we suggested 2 events, and so for private residents, and so staff had to add some of those prior conditions that you guys had looked at before. So if anyone wants to join us at that meeting, that would be greatly appreciated next Tuesday. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, at this time, any person may address the Planning Commission concerning an item that is not on the agenda. The Commission welcomes your attendance and participation. When addressing the Commission, please begin by providing your name and address for the record. Please keep comments to no more than 3 minutes to assure an orderly and timely meeting. And this is for items not on the agenda.
Bob Spears, West Grandview.
Good evening, Chair Dennison and esteemed members of the Planning Commission. My name is Bob Spears and I reside on Grandview. I'm here today to speak about the Commission's recent discussion on approved accessory dwelling units, ADU plans, specifically considering an 800 square foot model. Many years ago when I was on the Planning Commission, we rolled this out and we had a great discussion, and I want to give you a little some background as to what went on. I understand the importance of creating standardized, efficient, and accessible ADU plans to address the housing needs within our community. However, I would like to provide some personal perspective based on my recent experience. My wife and I just remodeled a house we own to be a 1-story final home, and we decided to build a small 380 square foot ADU in the back. The remodel and the ADU was designed by local architect Karen Moran. The unit exemplifies efficient use of space, affordability, and sustainability. Despite its smaller footprint, the ADU offers a comfortable and functional living space that will meet the needs of its occupants. To give current commissioners a better understanding of how smaller ADUs can efficiently contribute to our housing solutions, I would like to extend an invitation for all of you to come and visit our completed 380 square foot ADU. The firsthand experience would provide valuable insight on how a smaller unit functions in practice, highlighting its benefits and potential limitations. And I'm sure staff can make the arrangements, but the unit is, we haven't taken occupancy of the house yet, and the unit is completed and done, but I would like you to look at it, because when this was initially rolled out from the state, we looked at these as not being totally focused on family units, but also places for people with children or 2 people to reside in while they rent out their main house. I believe that such a visit could inform your discussion and decisions regarding the proposed 800 square foot pre-approval ADU plan. You are looking at pre-approved plans, and we talked about that before. Excellent idea. It will make things go better, and it'll be a great service to the community. It may also open dialogue on the commission about the versatility and availability of different ADU sizes to accommodate various needs and preferences within our community. In your discussion on ADUs, the commission members repeatedly brought up the idea that an ADU must accommodate the needs of a family, hence the focus on 800 square foot model. I would like you to consider that the ADUs offer our citizens a chance to age in place. Not all of us can afford the Kensington. They provide a local resource for parents, grandparents, or children to stay together. It is no secret that children are moving home because home ownership and rent is very expensive. A smaller ADU would address that need. Also remember that ADUs under 500 square feet are not charged LID and school use fees. My personal plan is that a caregiver can live in our ADU, and my wife and I will not have to move into assisted living facility. We can continue to live in the town that we love and save the expense and hassle of selling the house and moving into a facility. So thank you for your time and consideration. I look forward to the opportunity for us to explore diverse innovation solutions to our challenges, and I'm sure staff will be in touch when you want to come out and visit. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak on an item that is not on tonight's agenda? Hearing none, we will move to the new first order of business, the nomination for local historical landmark designation of the property located at 87 West Sierra Madre Boulevard as the Sierra Madre Playhouse. Does staff have a presentation?
Yes, our senior planner Wolf will deliver the presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Manager Lynn, and good evening, Chair Dennison, Vice Chair Pevsner, and members of the Planning Commission. On behalf of the Sierra Madre Playhouse, the President of the Board of Directors, David Gordon, has submitted an application to nominate the Sierra Madre Playhouse for designation as a local historical landmark. The property is situated on the north side of the boulevard, just east of Auburn Avenue intersection. The building was constructed in 1910, and in terms of development patterns, the site was among the first to be developed within the Luntz Tract. It's also within the commercial core downtown area of the city. Here's the Playhouse as it is seen today. However, it might be worth noting that since the photo was taken, work has been done to refurbish the marquee to maintain its appearance. Its facade makes an appearance in the cover of Southern California's story, Seeking a Better Life in Sierra Madre by Michelle Zach, as a painting by Carolyn Gravatt titled Showtime, and that's this book right here. The history of the site is rich but not well documented. Much of the information available was provided by Ward Calloway, who I've learned today is in our audience. He's a historian and former president of the board of directors at the Playhouse in his unpublished document titled This Old House. Beginning in 1910, we know that the building was constructed based on the records provided by the county assessor. Then in 1923, as it was built, it was first opened and operated as a furniture store. But then in 1923, the furniture store closes and renovations begin. It reopens in 1924 as a silent movie theater. Moving into 1930, during that period, that 6-year period, there was thought to be some closure, but we're not quite certain because that is where the records start to become unclear. But in 1930, it is noted that the theater reopens and it features talkies, which are, as the word describes, silent movies with talking people. The following year, the theater closes at the height of the Great Depression, and then in 1940, the theater reopens with motion picture. It continues this through 1964. That date is noted to be where the stage is built, although motion pictures are continued. Then in 1970, the building is subdivided within its current space, where storefronts are added, one of which is a record store. No longer functioning as such, though. In 1979 marks the beginning of the Sierra Madre Playhouse, where in the same year, proscenium is built and the stage is raised. Then in 1980, following the same year, Charles, excuse me if I do mispronounce this name, Charles Andries is the primary operator of the Playhouse. Up until 1996, when the board of directors for the Playhouse was formed by George and Yeti. Then in 2002, the second stage is added, new productions brought from Hollywood Stage by Verna Chilton. In 2005, the facade was remodeled in a design by Tom Pendlebury, based on The Great Man's Lady, and neon lighting was also added and refurbished. And more recently, in 2021, the marquee had been fully refurbished. The construction date of the marquee is actually unknown, but there are photos of the marquee featuring The Great Man's Lady and To Each His Own, which would date the marquee back to 1946. Now at this point, I'd like to turn the presentation over to Mr. David Gordon, who will elaborate more on the site's cultural significance and contributions to Sierra Madre.
Thank you. So, good evening, Planning Commission. Thank you for giving us the time to talk a bit more about the Sierra Madre Playhouse. So, I am David Gordon. I am the president of the Sierra Madre Playhouse, and I'm listed in the application as the owner. I'm not the owner. The owner is the Sierra Madre Playhouse, which is a tax-exempt, not-for-profit. My late wife and I moved to Sierra Madre in 2013, started going to the Playhouse, was incredibly impressed by the quality of the productions. We got involved, and actually we did the restoration of the marquee in 2020. I became president of the board in 2017. I would like to recognize some people who are here in the audience. Joshua Poorman, who wrote the excellent, from Saphos Environmental, who wrote the excellent application, is here in the audience. And also Ward Calloway, previously mentioned as a former president of the board and our unofficial historian. So as president, the board has had to ride out the challenges of COVID, and of also the change in California's labor legislation known as AB 5, which basically doubled our production costs and forced us to find a different business model. And we are now designate ourselves as a performing arts center. The difference being that we bring in music, we bring in jazz, we bring in silent films, as well as plays and musicals, which means that we can put on many more performances during the year without the enormous increase in production costs of just relying on plays. What we've also found is that aesthetically, we are extremely good for jazz, music, stand-up comedy, and so we are a very effective performing arts organization now. Much liked by the people who come and use it. So we're attracting a much more varied range of performances, a much more varied audiences. We know that in order to continue to attract audiences post-COVID, when people got used to their home entertainment systems and full sensory round, we have to upgrade the building. So we are in the midst of final stages of preparing plans for new ADA bathrooms, for an expanded lobby, for new HVAC, for new electricals, a thorough modernization of the Playhouse. And in order to raise the funds for doing that, having the historical designation will certainly help as an additional factor in raising money for a historic building. It also gives us a little bit of leeway in certain planning issues. So a bit more about the Playhouse. We are one of the oldest buildings in Sierra Madre. um, uh, furniture store from 1909, 1910 till 1923. And then a movie theatre from February the 2nd, 1924, with a showing of The Virginian, a silent movie. And so we celebrated 100 years as a place of entertainment. We had a silent film festival weekend on that February weekend to celebrate it. And then a theatre on and off from the 70s. In 2012, with the new management of the theatre, the quality of the productions went up fairly dramatically, and then at Performing Arts Centre in 2024. And I do remind people when they come to the theatre that we are one of the few buildings in the world which was showing movies in 1924 and is still capable of showing movies and still does show movies 100 years later. We're also a very significant part of the community. During one of the COVID years, we used the slogan, "The beacon on the boulevard," because we used the marquee for weekly changes of message, of inspiration and hope and relevance. So we're not just a building, we are a significant institution, and here are some of the messages that we put onto the marquee during that period. So our significance as a place of entertainment and culture, as a performing arts organization, is very significant. We plan to become one of the best known performing arts centers in the region, thanks to the quality of the performances that we're putting on. And we've also introduced for the first time family programming. So what you see on the screen is Bob Baker Marionette's program for children at 11 o'clock on a Saturday morning. So many Saturday mornings we have kids coming to the Playhouse to do something with their parents. This is a screenshot from our showing of Harold Lloyd's famous Safety Last, with a very, very skilled pianist sitting at the piano doing the accompaniment. And that evening we had in the audience Harold Lloyd's granddaughter, Suzanne Lloyd, to come as our guest of honor. And she made some wonderful introductory remarks about the film. This is not a piano, it's a harpsichord, because one of our series is Baroque music. And so this is a group called Tesserae, which is kind of artist in residence, bringing high quality music of a kind that you would expect to find in Disney Hall here in Sierra Madre. This is a shot from the latest thing which we have had on at the Playhouse, a musical called The Last 5 Years. There were 20 performances of this. This is in our old carnation of being a theatre and showing plays and musicals. Annoyingly, Broadway has just announced at the end of our production that they are bringing back this play to Broadway. It would have been good to know that before we did our publicity for the show. So we are a hub of activity for the community. As Joshua Wolf pointed out, we are on the cover of the official history of Sierra Madre. We are an icon of the city, and many prominent citizens have been associated with the Playhouse, whose names are listed in that extensive documentation. So we're very proud of our history. I think we're an important element of what makes Sierra Madre the very special place that it is, and with your help we'll make it even more special in the future. Thank you very much. I'll hand it back to Joshua.
Thank you, Mr. Gordon. So the designation procedures that are set by the municipal code require that the Planning Commission conduct a public hearing for such designations. These procedures also require the Planning Commission make a recommendation to the City Council at the conclusion of the hearing and in no event more than 60 days from the conclusion of the hearing. The recommendation shall include findings of fact relating to the criteria for designation established by the municipal code. The first of those criteria is shown on slide, and that is for designation on the criterion of historic relevance. And so as we saw, for 100 years, the site has operated as a venue for cultural performing arts, first as a silent movie theater and quickly adapting to the rapidly growing entertainment industry. The site brought the performing arts of the times to the Sierra Madre community, and in doing so, the site contributed significantly to the Sierra Madre's early cultural and economic growth. The Sierra Madre Playhouse is associated with persons who made significant contributions to its development, and those people are Dale White, Ward Calloway, George Agnetti, Barry Schwam, Stan Zales, Verna Chilton, Bob Hackman, and Charles Andries. The second of the two criteria is for finding based on architectural merits. But simply put, while the property exhibits a well-maintained and attractive appearance from the boulevard and exhibits some Art Deco styled elements, they do not rise to a level of significance because those elements were not completed in the time of the period of significance for the Art Deco style. The alternatives for the Planning Commission tonight are either to adopt the resolution, that's Resolution 24-10 as presented, which recommends the City Council designate the property at 87 West Sierra Madre Boulevard as a historical landmark, or approve that resolution with modifications, or continue the public hearing, providing direction to staff and the applicant, or recommend that the City Council deny the request, identifying findings the Planning Commission cannot make and the basis for rejecting those findings. The recommendation is for Planning Commission to adopt the Planning Commission resolution as presented, which recommends City Council designate the property as a historical landmark. The recommendation will be then forwarded to the City Council at its next available meeting. I have discussed this with the applicant, who has agreed to move that to July 23rd. That concludes my presentation.
Are there any questions for staff or the applicant?
Just one. How does this designation do anything to the cost that they incurred because of AB 5?
I'm not aware of the effects of AB 5.
Okay. Well, so there's no conflict. Whether we designate this historic or not, it has no bearing on their cost structure. The bill has already accomplished that, correct? I mean, they're already suffering from under that financial burden, and this is not going to rescue them or help them in any way.
So AB 5 has to do with the distinction between employees and independent contractors, and to the extent it's designated historic, that would have no bearing on that designation for their employment purposes.
I see. So they just changed that model. Okay. All right. I don't want to booger anything up by making it historical and then make it employees of an historical building or something like that. Okay. Thank you.
But there are still minor benefits that are afforded to historic landmarks, and those include a waiver of fees that the city imposes for building permits and plan check fees, which is a 50% waiver.
Right. Sure. Of course. Okay. Thank you.
And then will they be eligible for the Mills Act if they apply?
No. As a nonprofit organization, I do believe they're tax exempt, so there would be no tax benefit.
Great. Any other questions for staff or the applicant? All right, I see lots of familiar faces out there that are associated with the Playhouse. So at this time, we will open up comment for this particular agendized item for anybody who would like to speak. Please start off by giving your name and address for the record. And keep your comments to no greater than 3 minutes.
Hello, I'm Ward Calloway at 640 Camillo Road. I did some of the history there, and I should point out that over the years, from about 1924 to the present, it seemed about every 6 months or year, the name of the theater would change, or it would simply go dark and it would be another year or so before it opened. I would point out that since 1980, when it became a live theater, it has been occupied continuously that time, maintained, lately far better than it was before, but nevertheless maintained. And the owner was has always been available, or a representative. I think the Playhouse today looks better than it has for many years, certainly better than I can remember. And we intend to keep it that way. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any questions? No. Okay.
Hi, I'm Liza Kerrigan, 551 Alta Vista Drive, and I have for at least 12 years fiddled around with trying to understand the interiors and the layout of the Playhouse. We do need to upgrade it for ADA handicap use, and having this historic designation tremendously helps us to sort of massage things that otherwise would have to be very strictly code compliant. So we are trying to do everything we can to maintain the Playhouse and keep it going forward. But having the historic designation will really get us over the finish line. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Kerrigan.
Good evening, Chairperson Dennison and Planning Commission. I'm John Capocha, 91 West Highland, and I'm now a member of the board of the Playhouse. And I can't tell you just how thrilled I am to be part of this. I mean, the Playhouse is just an iconic landmark in Sierra Madre, and I think that's evident by what you heard from the report and, of course, seeing it on the Southern California story cover. But I just remember many years ago, probably maybe when the Playhouse wasn't doing so well and was in financial trouble, and folks like Ward stepped in to resurrect it a bit. But I remember one council member, that I'm not going to mention their name, suggesting that maybe perhaps it should be turned into a bowling alley. And, you know, that wasn't a good idea then, and certainly it isn't now. But if you approve this to make it, put it on the historical, as a historical designation, as Ward says, it's in better shape now than it's been for years. But what we're talking about doing is helping to ensure its survivability for the next 50 to 100 years. And as he said, all these little other playhouses around are closing, and ours is still in business. And I think with the leadership of David Gordon, we have a pretty good business model here. And I'm very confident that it's going to be successful and be an icon in Sierra Madre for years to come with your help. And hopefully you'll approve this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? All right, then we will go ahead and bring it back to deliberation from the Planning Commission. Anyone want to start?
I think it's a slam dunk. I mean, I think it's a formality. Yeah, it's an incredible asset to the city. So,
Yeah, I agree. I can make the findings and make a recommendation to approve the resolution.
Yes.
All right, then I will look for a motion to approve Planning Commission Resolution 24-10, recommending that the City Council approve the designation of property located at 87 West Sierra Madre Boulevard as a historical landmark, and amend the list of local historic landmarks to add Sierra Madre Playhouse to the list.
So moved.
I'll
Seconded.
Yeah, second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up is our a continuation of our public hearing, the annual review of conditional use permit 21-03 for Alverno Heights Academy 2021 master plan update, and a request for extension to Planning and Community Preservation Department condition number 12, the modular buildings. Do we have a presentation from staff?
Yes, we do. So this evening, the Planning Commission will continue the annual review for the master plan CUP at Alverno Heights Academy.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead and announce it.
Thank you.
For the record, the commissioner stepped out to recuse himself because he believes he has a conflict of interest.
Thank you.
So this meeting was continued from April 18th to date, and here is some backgrounds regarding the master plan. The City Council approved the master plan update on May 9th, 2023, and set the annual review date on the third Thursday of April. The Planning Commission held an annual meeting on April 18th and continued it to June 20th, 2024. Just a reminder that all mitigation measures from the approved conditional use permit for the master plan and the maximum capacity for the enrollment remained unchanged. The annual review has been held as public hearing instead of a discussion item because Alverno Heights Academy submitted a letter of request to seek for a 10-year extension for the modular classroom to remain on site. This amendment to the conditions of approval may be granted by the Planning Commission and at your discretion. At the last meeting, the Planning Commission had 3 asks of Alverno to provide additional information. First is regarding the extension of the modular classroom. The Planning Commission asked for a realistic timeline and justification of the time extension for the modular building. On June 11th, Alverno Heights Academy submitted a letter of clarification and justification for the request that the permanent facility do not have the needed space to accommodate their student growth and the need for the modular classroom. Alverno also had prepared a presentation for the Planning Commission, and we'll have that following my presentation. Second, the request was regarding the use of field. In the absence of the written agreement and consideration, the City Attorney's Office concluded that LaSalle's use of field does not constitute as a rent or any violations to the conditional use permit. The additional insured on the existing policy and the damage repaired are not considered as rent. If you like, City Attorney's Office can elaborate on that. The third ask was for the traffic flow. Alverno Heights confirmed that the drop-off and pickup procedure have been in place since the end of the 2022-2023 academy year. Alverno will continue to improve the on-site traffic flow to further reduce the car queuing on the public street or near the intersection. Anticipated in July 2024, the Public Works Department and also the Police Department will conduct a citywide engineering and traffic survey to further study the traffic issue on the intersection near Alverno Heights Academy. And we do have our police chief and our director of public works here tonight with us should you have any question for them. So the alternative this evening for the Planning Commission is to conduct the annual review of the conditional use permit 2103 of Vernon Heights Academy Master Plan update and approve the proposed amendment, or approve the amendment with modification, or deny the amendment citing the reason and findings for denial, or continue the annual review and provide directions to the applicant and staff. That concludes my presentation. And we can load up the Vernon Heights Academy's presentation.
Okay, are there any questions for staff before we move on? All right, great, thank you.
Good evening, Chair Dennison, members of the Commission. I'm Ken Farsing, the President of the Board of Trustees for Vernon Heights Academy. Make sure I do this correctly. There we go. So tonight, with our presentation, we want to give you a little sense of the modular classroom project. There were some questions that were raised about it at the last commission meeting, so we wanted to show you kind of the process that we went through for the modulars. We have some information on the use of the athletic field, traffic and circulation, master plan phasing, and then Joanne Harabedian, who's our head of school, is going to talk about the need for the modular classrooms for the extension. So the modular classroom project was approved by the city through design review, and that was on May 13th, 2020. The classrooms are regulated under the state architect and the Department of Housing and Community Development. They comply with the 2019 state building codes and associated uniform codes. And in the letter of approval, staff imposed 32 conditions on the modulars. The modulars were inspected by the city of Sierra Madre. The fire department, as part of their conditions, required a new fire hydrant on Michelinda, fire alarms, and fire sprinkler systems. The site was graded and prepared to NPDES low impact development standards, and we made significant investments in required ADA restrooms, walkway, ramps, and a parking area. And as required, all utilities are installed underground with upgrades to transformers and switchgear. And our cost exceeded $600,000. That included soft costs of design review, special studies, plan development, plan check, and construction. The staff asked that we locate the modulars in the footprint of the future multipurpose building, and we also wanted to preserve the prayer garden, which is adjacent to the villa. So we located the modulars northwest and east of the prayer garden. So the prayer garden really serves as kind of a central court for these classrooms. There was quite a bit of vegetation in that area when we started. We had some large eucalyptus trees, and you can see after we cut them down, you could see they were rotted on the inside. So it was just a matter of time before the wind took those trees over. So I think we made a really wise decision to take those trees out. We also ran into some improvements that we didn't know were there. There was an actual fishing pond that the Barlows had installed, and we ended up having to, when we over-X'd to get compaction, we had to remove the fishing pond that was there. It had been buried years ago. This is pictures of the fire hydrant service going in on Michelinda, and we also put a gate in for access for the fire department if they need to get into the site off of Michelinda, mid-block, and then trenching for the fire service sprinklers to the modular classrooms. On the left is the actual fire meter that was installed. And then you can see the amount of electrical and communication switch gear, everything that was put in underground to serve the modulars. We also did a series of new walkways. This is an ADA walkway to a new ADA restroom that we built near the cafeteria. And we decided that we needed to really renovate the paving and install new curbing along the villa's roads. We tried to replicate the gutter, the historic gutter that was designed. We actually had a special tool designed to replicate the concrete gutter at the villa. This was the day that we moved on. It was a Saturday, and we moved in. They basically came in sections. There were 6 sections that were put together to make the modulars. And you can see some of the teachers were excited about what was going on there. Installation of foundation work, ADA ramps, skirting. We did a ADA parking drop-off area near the cafeteria. New walkways were put in for all the classrooms, ADA compliant. This was the required drainage pond, pretty good size to contain the drainage from the modulars. It also was sized to catch some of the runoff above the modulars. And then drainage swales were put in to basically direct the drainage to the pond. This is part of the pictures of the ADA restroom under construction. That pictures of the staff doing some training on emergency systems, the alarms and fire sprinklers. This is a view of the modular classrooms. If you are on the campus, this is pretty much what you would see standing at the villa looking to the west. This is what you would see on Michelinda. You can see the modulars in the back of the vegetation. We did plant additional vegetation at the direction of city staff to help visually buffer the modulars. This is a little bit about the use of the athletic field. We believe that we're complying with the city code and that we're trying to provide additional benefits to the community as part of the conditional use permit process. And a little bit about condition number 3 in the master plan. It was actually a condition that was suggested by Alverno back in 2011. We were concerned, due to the lack of soccer fields in this general area, Sierra Madre and other areas, that there would be pressure to use the fields by AYSO and adult soccer leagues. So we wanted to make sure that was strictly prohibited. And we did ask that we be able to have groups affiliated with the school be able to use the fields. Now, the athletic field's been used for high school students for soccer, softball, track and field, for practices and games since September of 2019 when it opened. And I think the commission's aware that there was a softball field there that had been constructed in 1964, and it had been used by the girls' high school and also by the girls' softball league here in Sierra Madre. So it's not unusual to have softball there. Now, the master plan's environmental document studied field use by 200 high school and 200 lower school students. And the field use has decreased a bit, pretty much remained the same, hasn't really increased. A little bit about Alverno and LaSalle. We're affiliated and have shared educational programs, and 36% over 247 students that attend LaSalle are Sierra Madre residents. So we believe we're following the spirit and plain language of the permit, and as the staff has indicated, the city attorney has basically looked at the use of the field by LaSalle and does not feel that it constitutes a rent, though we do make sure that any damage is repaired and that we have insurance. Now, the issue of congestion at Michelin and Highland was raised at the Planning Commission meeting, and as the staff's indicated, we're implementing planning condition number 8, and we divided the drop-off and pickup of students between Michelinda and Wilson to spread out the impacts on congestion and traffic in general. The original traffic studies that were done in 2020, 2021 looked at an enrollment of 200 high school students and 200 elementary school students, and it forecast 727 daily trips. Now, with the closing of the high school, because high school students would drive their cars typically to school, many of them did, the daily trips dropped by 211 to 516. That would be at build-out. Now, with the 400 student enrollment, it's important to note that all the streets surrounding the school remain at level of service A. So that's the very best level of service that you can have. Now, the afternoon queuing of vehicles really are, in our perspective, we want to work on that, but we know there's other impacts, the other schools, and we mentioned at the other presentation that a lot of the schools in this area were built in the 1950s and 1960s when kids walked to school. But you drive all over the San Gabriel Valley and look at schools, and parents are driving their kids to school now. Now, what we'd like to do is, in order to take care of that afternoon queue, we'd like to open the school's gates earlier in the afternoon, and that would allow parents, instead of lining up on Michelinda, they would come into the campus and start parking on the campus. And that would eliminate some of the traffic parking there, the parents parking on Michelinda. There's also an issue raised about speeding cars on Wilson. We do take that seriously. We don't want any speeding from our families. Obviously, it's a residential area. And we've encouraged our families through information to respect the neighborhood and obey the school speed zone limit. Our staff does monitor the flow of traffic on campus, but as we indicated at the last meeting, we can't enforce on the public streets. That's really for the Sierra Madre Police Department. We do have signs posted on the campus that reminds the parents as they're leaving to be respectful of the residential neighborhood. We occasionally get complaints, and we will reach out to those parents if we can identify them, if by vehicle, or if one of the neighbors said, hey, I saw such and such car drive by and it was speeding. We do reach out to those parents and basically talk with them. And then our understanding is that the police department's been monitoring Wilson Avenue. I think the chief's here, so he can talk a little bit about that. Now, in the master plan phasing, the commission requested information in order to consider granting the time extension for the modulars. Now, planning condition number 6 includes a phasing plan, which included flexibility in allowing Alverno to decide the timing of facilities. There are 5 classroom buildings of varying sizes in the master plan. We believe flexibility is required since circumstances can change. If anyone in this room can tell me that you predicted the pandemic, if you can tell me that, then that's great, but I don't think anyone predicted the impacts of the pandemic. So there could be future pandemics, future economic recessions that may change our plans, and that's why we believe flexibility is important. Now, basically, timing is based on parent interest in the school, which Joanne will talk about, and the ability to raise capital funds. This last year and a half, we've been working on the sports court. That's our first priority, is to raise funds for the sports court. And that's an over $300,000 project that we're working on. We're basically in plan check, ready to begin the sports courts. So we really would request flexibility to construct one of the buildings during the 10-year extension request. We'd have to make a decision which classrooms or classroom that would be, but we believe it really should be left up to us to do that. Now I'm going to go ahead and ask Joanne to cover the need for the modulars.
Thank you, Ken. Good evening, Commissioners, and thank you for your time and consideration. I'm Joanne Harbedian, as Ken introduced me. At our last meeting, there were several questions that I hope to be able to answer accurately for you. As you know, Alverno was constructed in 1959 during the baby boom as an all-girls high school for 500 students. Enrollment was reduced in 2011 with the master plan amendment. During the 60s and 70s, the library and villa was used as additional classroom space, although high school students rotate to subject classrooms for a certain amount of period of time, usually 50 to 60 minutes, whereas elementary school students have homerooms and then they rotate out for their extras. So educational programming at all levels has vastly improved and changed since the school was first constructed. Elementary school students are assigned to homerooms and, as I said, to additional spaces for the extras that we offer during 21st century learning. Today, TK through 8th grade students require rooms that are dedicated to classes such as computers and coding, robotics, makerspace, 2 science labs, music, art, and religion. The modern day classrooms have evolved to include advanced technology and project-based learning to accommodate students' multiple learning needs. Schools in the 20th century were more teacher-centered, with teachers providing most of the instruction and students being expected just to listen and learn. One of the most notable changes in education in recent years is the increase of technology in the classroom and beyond the school walls. The integration of technology into education has not only changed the way lessons are delivered, but also how students learn and interact with that information. Today's school classrooms place a greater emphasis on personalization and student-centered learning in small, interactive, collaborative groupings. Students may go at their own pace. They don't move on to the next lesson simply because it's time to go and they've completed part or all of the work. They move on when they have mastered the concept and when they're ready to build on that skill. At Alverno, our teaching assistants assure every student has equal opportunity to truly master foundational concepts, which then builds their self-esteem and establishes a lifelong love of learning. These are the students who will go on to colleges and universities and become our future leaders. Alverno anticipates enrollment will grow slowly. The current enrollment is 265 students. There is great parent interest in additional enrollment for younger age students in the lower grades. Typically, students entering in TK will remain until graduating in 8th grade, which is a 10-year span. Younger students will require homerooms as they move through the grade levels, and the modulars will satisfy the need for additional space. I thank you for your time and consideration. Any questions? No?
How many, when it was still a high school, how many students were there?
The 500 was the COP at the time, and then in 2011 it was reduced to 400.
So while the high school was still operating, you had just under 400 students there?
It depends what years you're asking about. Is that
What was the maximum?
400.
400?
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a quick question, just so I make sure I understand. In the present, what year were the modular buildings installed?
In 2020.
So they've been there for just 3 or 4 years?
That's correct.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And this is, this CUP has a lot of similarities to the last master plan that was a 10-year plan. How many of the buildings from the 2010 master plan were developed during that 10-year process?
I think we were asked that question before. In terms of buildings, the only thing in the master plan we did in terms of building-wise was renovation to the library, turning it into the Learning Technology Center. But we built the athletic field, which was about $2.5 million. It was a major lift for the school. And we did internal improvements, and also the exterior added to Michelinda, the beautification project for the fencing project on Michelinda in Grandview. So we did quite a few. And there were some internal, like we converted a garage, was converted to a chapel, things like that.
Yeah, but none of the buildings that were on that master plan
There was really only one building, and that was the multi-purpose building. I mean, there weren't additional classrooms planned in 2011.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant?
No.
No. All right. At this time, any person may address the Planning Commission concerning this particular agendized item. The Commission welcomes your attendance and participation. When addressing the Commission, please begin by providing your name and address for the record. Please keep comments to no more than 3 minutes to assure an orderly and timely meeting, and we will start with comment cards.
Running Bear Bunch, Betty Hill.
Could you say that name again? I couldn't hear.
Running Bear Bunch.
Running Bear Bunch, thank you.
Hi there, Commissioners. Thank you for having me. My name's Running Bear Bunch. I grew up here. I now live in Duarte. I'm a parent here at Alverno. I'm also the parent representative on the Board of Trustees. Sierra Madre boasts 4 private schools that cover the TK-8 comprehensive education. Those tuitions range from a little under $8,000 a year to over $23,000 a year. The reason why I bring that up is because each time I've come to these meetings in the last 2 years, I've heard from commissioners and city council, why doesn't Alverno simply raise tuition? And how many students reside within Sierra Madre? And what I will say is, when a student comes from wherever they do to attend school in Sierra Madre, they join baseball teams, softball teams, they have sleepovers, they develop friendships, they eat ice cream downtown, they become a member of the community. Now, it's not up to them where their parents bought a house, but it is up to them and their parents where they go to school. Sierra Madre just graduated 86 students this last June from those 4 comprehensive private schools. 29 of them came from Alverno. That's 34%, which isn't too bad for 4 years in business. The thing that is happening tonight is a very simple request. Pedagogy has changed. The school was built a long time ago, and we need the space. The people behind me are the experts. I don't think they need to provide syllabi of what's going to happen in the rooms, except to say that they're using the space. There's a great deal of demand for education in Sierra Madre, not just from Sierra Madre residents, but outside the city. Sierra Madre has more independent schools than it has bars. That should mean something to somebody. Sierra Madre is in demand for education, and this commission should be super proud of that. The city should be super proud of that. And the city should welcome every kid, just like I got the consideration of being a resident when I lived on Montecito and East Bonita. My kids are here. Let's go on the record tonight with something proactive for education. If we can't use the rooms in the next 10 years, we'll be the first to get rid of them, because it doesn't make logic sense to just hang on to them. We pay for them. We lease them. But right now, we need the space, and we can use them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bunch.
Keith Stevens, West Grandview.
Commissioners, for decades, the Alverno Master Plan has promised a bright future with appropriately updated classrooms, modern curriculum, small class sizes, league sports played on regulation fields and courts, and of course a gym. Next, they promise they don't have the funding to execute the master plan and are unable to estimate any timeline. Finally, they ask to be exempted from city codes and appropriate neighborhood compatibility until their master plan is completed, because following all the rules is inconvenient and costs money. No matter how liberal conditions given, Alverno manages to cross the line just one more time, again and again. We have noted repeated Alverno CUP violations to this commission, past and present. We document observed code violations to validate our complaints. Alverno's recent response is stop taking pictures, as noted in their legally questionable sign on Grandview. Alverno management is in denial of CUP violations. Alverno has long argued their limited ability to pay for maintenance and updates on their 12-acre property and 100-year-old villa. They have a second CUP to create disturbance when school is not. It is still not enough to fund all needed maintenance, let alone master plan improvements. Once again, they need more understanding and exception from this commission and the neighbors. I've lived this empty promise for 30 years, and history needs to stop repeating itself. The inconvenient truth here is to fund the Alverno Master Plan, they need full enrollment, paying increased tuition every year. Alverno's piecemeal approach, built on temporary exceptions, needs to be stopped. They need to submit a master plan they can afford to live by today, within the existing permanent structures, in a way that is compatible with and a complement to adjacent properties. Other use options are permissible. Maybe a school with a party palace is not the best option for the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else like to come speak at this time? All right, then I will bring it back to the commission for deliberation. Anybody want to start?
Sure. So we had in the CUP, the city council's resolution last year that the sports courts were going to be completed in 15 months. So I think they're supposed to, that would be due to be completed in like August. Is that 15 months?
That's correct. From May 2020 through, and then it'll end at
Okay.
August 2024.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that if they were not completed, we could not use the Michelinda parking lot. So it wasn't as if we had to build the sports courts, it's just we couldn't have athletic activities in the Michelinda lot. And you can, perhaps the city attorney can clarify that.
Didn't read that, but is that
It
your
says
understanding?
there's a may in there. If you look at, we're not in violation of our CUP if we don't complete the sports courts. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, I'd like to reserve judgment on that one for the time being because it's not at issue per se right now.
Okay.
If that becomes an issue, staff will weigh in.
Okay. I did hear that we just had something submitted for the sports courts recently, and it's in the city's hands now. Were there any part of the general noise attenuation stated that the applicant shall consult with the city staff regarding additional vegetation and additional sound damping measures for the sports court? And I was curious if that was included in what we've received yet.
Yes, so staff received the application for the sports court on April 2024 this year, and then the application is deemed complete on June 4th, 2024, with the condition from the Public Works that Alverno Heights Academy will plant vegetation along the Highland Avenue to mitigate the noise from the sports court.
Okay.
So the condition was placed on the,
And like a condition of like the type of, I mean, obviously like, short grass isn't gonna do anything, but denser, thicker type things, I guess would have, was there something in there about that?
right, so during the construction documents, they will have to work with Public Works
Okay.
and with James Carlson that the type of tree will be suitable for that location.
Okay. I think my next question came from something from last time that was being discussed, but it was also mentioned in a lot of public comment that was emailed to us, was about at the end of the 2022-2023 academic year that the Grandview parking lot would not be used for general play and recess, congregation, and lunch. Do you have anything about that? I just keep hearing that it
I think you're referring
has been.
to the Michelinda lot.
Yes.
Right? So would you repeat your question, please?
Is it being used for general play and recess, congregation, or lunch?
No, it is not.
There's,
It's,
so
it's a parking lot only, and we only queue in for pickup and drop off daily.
okay, so there's no use of picnic tables or anything up in that way?
No, there's two small picnic tables, that very small ones, that are situated up there so that if students are awaiting pickup, they can put
can
their
sit
things on
there.
top of it and just sit there and wait. But no, there's no eating. There's lunches and snacks stopped immediately after that request.
Well, after that school year.
Yeah, even before then. Yeah, we stopped before then. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think
This is Mr. Martinez. He's the assistant head of school.
I think the years cited might be wrong.
Okay.
I think it's the 22-23 school year that it's.
Correct, 22, 23.
Right. So that just ended.
No,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's 23-24.
Right.
And so that's the
So
school
that
year
was
that
a
just
year
ended.
ago. 22, I think I said 22, 23. Okay, so that would have ended over a year ago. I mean, because we just ended 24 already, right?
Correct. The agreement was that we had, as we were, so the next 15 months from that agreement, when we had that meeting till 2 o'clock in the morning, that we were going to have until the end of this school year to use the parking lot for our sporting events, PE, and so we did do that, but we understand at this point we cannot use the parking lot, the Mitchell in the parking lot, for any sporting events.
Well, that was part of condition E. Condition F was supposed to end a year ago, until the end of the 22-23 academic year.
The read, Alex, have Alex,
May 9th. Of what year? 2023.
okay.
2020.
Yeah, I think, I understand what you're saying, that we talked about ending 22-23, but because the agreement was made that we were going to create sports courts, we were given a 15-month ability to still use the Mitchell in the lot for certain things.
For basketball, right, that's condition
Basketball,
E.
for PE classes, for the after-school
That's-
sports.
Right, that's condition E.
And we did do that. We no longer used it for lunchtime. There was no daily lunch use, kids in and out there like there was previous to that point. So that ended.
Right.
So I mean, we had certain things we could do during this time period from that date to now that we did use it for, but we understood that after the end of the school year that we would not be able to do that again next year, and we understand that.
Right, it was to be used for basketball for 5th through 8th grade students, during the 40-minute combined total morning recess, physical education classes, and after-school sports till 6:30.
Yeah, so we did.
That was through this last year.
Yes, and we did use it for those purposes.
Okay, there was complaints about volleyball and stuff happening up there, so volleyball was not.
It says no volleyball is permitted as part of recess.
Oh, okay, maybe just recess then.
Yeah, so maybe it could have been a sport after schoolers.
And
Okay.
I think, let me say this too, we are an elementary, we're not a high school, we don't have our kids at practice 5-6 days a week like you get. So a lot of times we'll use lunchtime to have a practice, or we would do stuff like that. So, and volleyball would be one of those
Okay.
situations.
Okay. Thank you. Can we go on from me for a second?
Well, I'll just go, because I mean, my position's been pretty simple. The school just finished closing the high school. They've been really not even 1 year out of the blocks for the K through 8. They, as the residents know and have stated, they don't have the funds to fulfill their master plan and the superior buildings that, we pointed out. They have what they have, and I'm just not willing to, there's many reasons where we could deny all this, because they don't have they're not anywhere close to meeting the requirements of what their glorious master plan, which is wonderful. But as I said before, it invokes somebody coming in with a foundation to fund millions of dollars of development. And I think what they've got right now is usable. I don't think the complaints from the public are germane to what we're going over tonight, and I think that they have a chance to make a go of it. But I think what was brought out last time was that we're not going to give them 10 years, that we should have some kind of short-term review of this to see if they accomplish anything. The school may not even survive the next 3 years, so maybe 3-year terms over the next 10 years is how I see it. But I can make the findings to give them the temporary use of these modules extension, but with more tight review. And because I think that's the practicality, whether you want to scrutinize the language of the master plan and what they were supposed to accomplish and what the reality of what we have. I think they should be given some time to see what they can come up with. They've got motivated parents, and I'm hoping that they'll come up with something.
I would agree. That was my main thought last time, was that the 10 years seemed a little bit too long. I think the conversations we're having tonight are great about the modulars, and it's not that I disagree with the use of the modulars. I just feel like, as they say, no one can predict the future. So making it long enough that obviously this process takes a long time, and it takes a lot out of the Planning Commission and everyone else, that it's beneficial, and we're not revisiting this, every 6 months, but short enough that it's not a whole 10 years before we have the real talk conversation. How's it going with the buildings that were initially intended to be temporary, and then in light of the circumstances seem to be less so.
Yeah, I was less concerned about the other two items and strictly concerned about the duration of it, of how long these temporary buildings were meant for. They were initially given a term of 4 years. Clearly that was an indication that these were meant to be temporary buildings. I would have a hard time making any of the findings that are required for these buildings to be fitting in a historic site like this. I can't make those findings, and so granting a 10-year extension of them is just not something I can make. I think, to Commissioner Pevsner's point, that a shorter review is probably the right way to go. So I think it just comes down to that timeline. I personally think 2 years, but I guess I could get behind 3 if that's...
I would advocate for 3 or 4, simply because the process itself seems to take a while.
The process doesn't, so the process was that they were supposed to be done at 4 years.
Yeah.
The only reason that we had a meeting about it, other than just our annual standard review, which wouldn't have even been a hearing, is because they requested that time extension.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want it to appear that we've dragged our feet on this or delayed this. That was per the applicant's request to have a hearing to modify this, and it doesn't always happen in one meeting. There's questions, right? So. Right.
That makes sense. I just feel like if we gave them a little bit longer term, at least for the first one, they might have enough time that by the next time they have their act together, actually, whereas in 2 years, I would expect the only thing that we would get from them in 2 years is another request for an extension, because it seems like with the slowly gaining enrollment and all the other plans that they have to potentially eventually replace these buildings, it will take a little bit of time. And so I would just expect with 2 years us being back in the same situation, whereas with 3 or 4, maybe by that point they will have said, okay, we're ready to replace these now, and here's our plan.
I would have a really hard time going past 3, but I'm open to discussion.
Since I won't be here in 3 years, but I wanted to be for this meeting.
You'll be here in 3 days.
I'll leave it up to you 3 to decide to hash it out. But yeah, I mean, I just.
But towards your end, we can ask staff to ensure that the annual review that year is set up as a public hearing if they're gonna make that request. I think it was anyway, so.
Yeah, I can get behind that. I just wanted, my questioning was to ensure that they were meeting the other things that they did have a chance to meet as far as the conditions of the permit. Before I start adding to a permit, I wanted to make sure we were on that. So and at 4 years, for some reason I thought it was longer, but if they've only been there 4 years, that's still pretty temporary for me. I cannot get behind 10, obviously. I would like to go to 2. I think that's still pretty far out. We have another intermediate hearing between now and then, and we could still get back together in 2 years and get a better update of what maybe an update what the master plan is looking like, and see from there.
I'm good with 2. To your point, the process is to ask for an extension, and
Right.
if the report indicates that we should be giving an extension because they're making good progress on fundraising towards a bigger master plan to replace these, then we can talk about it then.
To argue against myself, maybe 2 years with an extension is, if we do 2-year increments, maybe it will be just each time it's a little bit easier rather than this massive ask. So I'm okay with 2.
All right, then I will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to, my apologies. To issue conditional, where is it?
To approve the annual review of conditional use permit 2103 and to approve the extension for condition number 12 of the modular buildings for 2 years.
So moved.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Our next item of business is Planning Commission reports. Anybody has to report?
Chair, just one point of order. I believe you had skipped the consent item, cancellation of the regular commission meeting.
I sure did. Thank you for pointing that out.
Which one is that?
That was super important too, because I will not be here. I'll be in this general area, but not specifically in this building. So I would ask for a motion to approve the cancellation of our regular Planning Commission meeting scheduled for July 4th, 2024.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I think I need to abstain.
We have 3 yeas and 1 abstention. Thank you, Mr. City Attorney.
The lame duck.
Yeah, sorry about
Well, on that note, under commissioner reports, I would just like to give a huge thank you to to Vice Chair Pevsner, who is stepping away after his second 8-year stint on the commission, having served 16 years total. I understand you're applying for the commissionership in 2 years. Is that right?
Right.
Only if someone calls me.
Well, all joking aside, we truly appreciate your leadership, your guidance, being the voice of sanity to us and reminding us of all the history and the work that you've put in over the years. So thank you very much for all you've done.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much. And it's my announcement. I want to make a plug for the fun run, sponsored or co-sponsored by the YMCA, who does a great job at running the yak and the swim program and the gym. And I think it's a good relationship for the city. And I want to just put a plug in for the Y, and have the city continue to maintain that relationship in any way, because they do a great job.
Thank you. And with that, I guess we'll hand it back to Planning Manager Lynn for community preservation reports.
Right, so we'll be canceling our next meeting, and the following meeting will fall on July 18th. We have a certificate of appropriateness, And then also another training session with our city attorney, the Rosenberg rules and of orders, and commissioner training.
It's just going to be on parliamentary procedure because we have so many new commissioners. Thought it might be helpful.
Great.
Would be, but that's a meeting that I'm missing.
Well, we may reschedule.
We'll still have the certificate of appropriateness.
Correct.
All right.
That concludes my report.
All right, thank you. And I understand that there have been multiple applicants for the soon-to-be vacant, I'll see how long I can drag this out, the soon-to-be vacant position here on the commission. Is that accurate, Manager Lin?
Yes, from our city clerk's office, we have received 4 applications.
And is it correct, my thinking, that we won't see the city council meet till mid-August now?
Right, so the city council is dark in August.
Oh, okay. So they will be around, they are around in July, and we'll be
July
able to
and then
vote on a.
Correct.
So we'll have a new commissioner for our July 18th meeting,
That's correct.
if they so choose.
Just nodding.
Fantastic. All right, anything else? No?
No, nothing.
All right, then I will adjourn to our next regularly scheduled meeting on July 18th.